All right. Welcome, everybody. Welcome to our first edition of our monthly Real Brothers Book Club. My name is TL of Real Brothers, and tonight we will be discussing the Real Brothers, Elie Mystal's book, um, which is entitled Allow Me to Retort. It's a very good book. I highly recommend this book because it breaks down uh, the Constitution and the laws of the governing laws of our country, and it breaks it down into the basics where regular, like you don't have to be a lawyer to understand. And that's why I like this book so much. I'm just going to wait a little bit to wait for a few users to join, and then we'll get right to it. Um, One of the things that I like about the Real Brothers books and everything, excuse me, the Real Brothers Book Club, is that we're going to be bringing a lot of books. We're going monthly to the we're going to be bringing a lot of books to our community, because if you want to be a leader, you got to be a reader, right? So we're going to start covering books that are, you know, kind of important literature for our community. You know what I mean? For real brothers and sisters, especially the Black community. Not saying that if you're not Black, you can't join the book club, but we're just trying to get a more we're trying to get our people to read, you know, up their reading, so that we can start to get invested in our education and our spirituality, and also our consciousness. So that's basically what we're trying to do is raise the level of spirituality and raise the level of consciousness of our brothers and sisters. All right. So while I'm waiting for a few people to join, I'm going to just take a look at what we got going here, and I'll give a little presentation, or I'll give a little bit of what we're going to be covering. Um, I didn't cover every single chapter because that would probably take a little more time than the time we have allotted for this. Um, but if you pick up the book, you can go through every chapter, and every chapter is pretty good. I just picked out the ones that I thought would be important, for our community, or important for just important for the review of the actual book. And we had Ellie on the show a couple months ago, and man, he laid it down, and he told us where he got his inspiration to do what he does. And man, he's like the modern day James Baldwin. This is going to be a good literary read, as well as a good educational piece for people who may not be as who may not have as good a grasp on our Constitution and the laws of the land. So with that, let me just get started. So the first chapter that I'm going to go over is chapter number 3, or actually it's chapter number 2. Bigotry is illegal even if you've been ordered to do it by Jesus. And as you can tell, Ellie has he has a way with words too, and that's what I enjoy about it too. It's not just the straightforward legal jargon that you may be used to. And like I said, he broke it down in layman's terms where everybody can actually you know, everybody can actually enjoy it. All right. So he starts off and says, you can't have a conversation with a Republican about virtues of progressive policies in this country without running into that Republicans' interpretation of the Second Amendment. You know, they're all about the guns and, and the thing is, they kind of, he kind of explains where the people who wrote the Constitution. Well, first off, let me say this: the people that wrote the Constitution, it was the Constitution was written by colonizers and slave owners for other colonizers and slave owners. So that is kind of the first thing that the Constitution has a strike in my book about, its fairness, uh its actual for forethought of what this country would turn into. Because I mean, they brought us over by the boatloads, but I guess they didn't figure that we would ever be to the point where we would have the same equal rights as those black slave owners, which we actually don't still. But they frame it in a way, they have it framed in a way that uh, is based on it can be turned and based on a certain interpretation. All right, and he explains that in the book. So the first one he's talking about is the Second Amendment, which is a rel a rel a well it's tongue twister a well regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state. The right of people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. But the thing is, when they were talking about that, they 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 didn't think that they didn't have the same weaponry that's available to the general public that they have now. And one of the things, just like take in the last what 10 days, I think we've had, how many mass shooting, two mass shootings, if not no, actually three mass shootings. So there's actually more mass shootings that occurred than the actual days of the week that in the time frame in a small amount of time. So, I mean, I don't think the people that wrote this document, uh, the Constitution, had any forethought that that was going to be the case. And if they did, I mean, then shame on them. All right. And so he also states here that the court cannot take judicial notice that a shotgun having a barrel less than 18 inches long has today any reasonable relation to the preservation or efficiency of a well regulated militia, and therefore cannot say that the Second Amendment guarantees to the citizen the right to keep and bear such a weapon. So he goes in on, on the NRA and, the Gun Control Act that was written in 1986, and he explains it, uh, actually how it was written. Um, so the it's like a catch 22. Well, it's not even a catch 22. It's just that these some of these laws are outdated, especially when you consider the growth of the population, you know the 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 issues that we currently have in this society, with people killing people for no reason, especially like in our neighborhoods. In our black neighborhoods, we have young people as young as, I've even heard people like 10, 11. I've heard of people 10 and 11 having guns. I mean, uh, wow, that like blows the mind, man. Like, that shouldn't even be a that shouldn't even be possible. But I digress. And that was just chapter 3. And also, what I did was for tonight's review, I added chapters 4, 5, and 6 because they all did. Those chapters deal with well, for one, chapter 4 is stop frisking me, right, and then chapter 5 is attack dogs are not reasonable, and chapter 6 is why you can't punch a cop. So those 3 chapters are sort of related. So I just kind of mushed them together just for time's sake. So he goes in and talks about how the stop and frisk laws are unconstitutional, and how there there is a there is a well, there should be the, the police should have a reason to stop and frisk you. Like, they shouldn't be able to look at you and say, oh, okay, this guy is a black guy and he's in a white neighborhood, and we should check him out and see what he's doing. No, that's not. And they have it framed under the reasonable suspicion. Well, what is reasonable suspicion? You know what I mean? Unless you see him carrying a gun or he's actually breaking into a house, like, w- you know, reasonable suspicion is kind of and he states it here on page 49. He said Giuliani and Bratton did, then reasonable suspicion becomes a joke. And they when you set the bar for crime as low as Giuliani and Bratton did, then that reasonable suspicion is kind of is like it, that's just basic racism on its face. Um, so yeah, and then we have the attack dogs, which you know, and this is like attack dogs when when people are protesting, and cops uh, are allowed to bring out say a drug sniffing dog without any reasonable uh, without any reasonable evidence or reasonable suspicion, that you've even done anything. You know what I mean? So he covers that as well as in chapter 6, which is a funny chapter actually, is why you can't punch a cop. Okay, so they get into why you can't punch a cop because a cop can they have qualified immunity, first of all, which that is, and this chapter talks about that, which is trash, um, which makes them not have to be accountable for for when they do uh, assault a person. Um, and the thing is, if a cop hits you and you hit a cop back, first thing they're going to say is that you assaulted a cop. But I mean, should they have the right to should they have the right to to assault you first? You know what I mean? So there's plenty of he lists plenty of precedent, and actually how the book actually turned into excuse me how the laws actually uh, uh, how the Supreme Court actually interpreted the laws in favor of police and police unions. Uh, for one case, he gave the Ninth Circuit's rule in 2017, the County of Los Angeles versus Mendez. Um, let's see. The facts in Mendez are a gross example of abuse and police power. Uh, Angel Mendez and his wife Jennifer were homeless, living in a shack in a friend's backyard. The police searching for an armed parolee came across those windowless shack came across their windowless shack while researching the friend's premises without a warrant or even so much as a knock, and announced that they were law enforcement. The police barged into the shack. So the police alleged that Mendez reached for a BB gun, which he owned for shooting rats. And the cops opened fire, unleashing 15 shots. And he was shot multiple times. And his wife, who was pregnant at the time, was shot in the back and in the hand. Thank, Thankfully, they survived, but they and was able to sue. But even though they sued, a judge ruled that uh, shooting a lady in the uh, because he had a BB gun and shooting a pregnant lady in the back was reasonable use of force under the circumstance. And I mean, and that's kind of crazy because it, anyway. Please pick up this book. This is a good read. I mean, this it goes over all this precedent in different cases and things that not only black people but people in general need to know, because you need to know your rights in order to be able to navigate, especially when it comes to dealing with police and law enforcement. So I mean, and that leads us to chapter 7, and which another thing, he the way this book is laid out, it flows very nice. It goes from, you know, bang 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 bang, and it doesn't leave you like, well, what the hell is he talking about? You know what I mean? It actually explains everything in pretty much uh a a a good succession. All right, so chapter number 7, he's talking about stopping police brutality. All right, and he mentions the Fourth Amendment, and the Fourth Amendment uh, does, he says, the Fourth Amendment does all the work uh, when you're talking about the last the Constitution and the end of the end of the scourge of police violence against black people. And it states here the right of people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures shall not be violated, and no warrants shall issue, but upon probable cause, supported by oath or affirmation, and particularly describing the place to be searched and the person or things to be seized. Boom. He says, and this is him. This is him. Uh, Make people stop because they're black is an unreasonable search. Make shooting people because they're black an unreasonable seizure. Make shall not be violated include actually prosecuting cops and holding them personally accountable when they violate these principles. And that's when we go back to talking about the qualified immunity, and he explains all of that in the book as well. Yeah, this is really a good read. Um, all right, so then we go to, and this chapter I really liked it because it gave me a lot of information that I didn't have before. Chapter 9, which is the taking of black land. Okay, so what he was talking about in this chapter was uh, actually Seneca Village, which was in New York City. I'm sure everyone has heard of Central Park, right? Central Park in New York. Well, that used to be a place called uh, Seneca Village, which was a black populated community and neighborhood. So they actually seized that land from these people in order to create a park. And the thing is, that was done with little to no, you know, that it was done. unfairly, first of all, because of like zoning and what they call it, eminent domain. Yeah, and he explains, all of that about eminent domain and how eminent domain is one of those established laws that basically took away a lot of black people's ability to gain uh, gain generational wealth, because the quickest way in this country to start generating wealth is to own property, right? So these people in Seneca Village owned property. Everybody owned their own house. They had their own neighborhood. There was low crime. There was no, but they took this area and they took it for pennies on the dollar. Uh, so just imagine those same people today. If those families were to still have if that community still existed today, and those people still own those houses, do you know how much that land, those houses and that land would be worth today? Like in the millions. Like, so this is all in this book, and I like the way he broke it down, because he gives you exact instances of the eminent domain cases, and explains how they were allowed to do it. And this is all the Supreme Court. I mean, it's if you like, it's all a joke. It's all a joke. Like, they this is we please read this book. My goodness, it is good. It is awesome. In order to for us to in order to us in order for us to journey to further, uh to be able to go further in life, in order for us to change our plight, in order from us to go from, you know uh, a, a lower class of income, we need to know what's going on. And one way to know what's going on is to know the laws of our land, and how, in this instance, well, in most instances, how they are against the uh, the forward progress of black people, and and others. Okay, so anyway, once again, so now we're going to switch gears a little bit, and go to chapter 10, which talks about a jury of your white peers. And he explains why he put white peers in there as well, because in most, as he says, and let's see, which page is it here? uh how they can, this is a this is an explanation of how black people, or actually how black people that are sentenced to crime, usually don't have a jury of their peers. They're usually judged by white people. So they so and the process of jury selection is, and this has to do with the Sixth Amendment, and I lost where it was. He describes a process called voir dire, VOIR space DIRE, and which this allows a prosecutor to exclude certain members of the jury pool or jury selection, based on you know the stupidest of reasons. It could be anything actually. So that is one thing that people don't really take into consideration when they think about going, you know, if they thinking about going to court and be judged by a jury. You want to make sure that you can have a jury of your peers. And sometimes, a jury of your peers is not going to be, 12 white jurors. You know what I mean? Especially if you're, an African American, and especially a low income African American. And he lists the cases, certain cases as precedent, like Batson versus Kentucky, and a couple others. But and the thing is, you know, he gives really good reasons of dissent, and really good reasons that that shouldn't be allowed to take place. You know what I mean? So uh is it really is it, oh, hey Patricia. Yes, this will be recorded, and I'll be sending it out on the Real Brothers live page, and also on the in the group chat, and as well as on our Facebook and Twitter pages. All right. So yeah, so this goes over jury of your white peers, and then we mosey on over to what is it? The what he calls the most important part. Okay, and that starts out as in a sense, I've been explaining the Constitution with one hand tied behind my back. I've been looking at our rights and protections through the lens of the Bill of Rights and the 10 amendments originally appended to the Constitution, as the originalists do. I've been trying to explain why originalists are wrong on their ground and on their terms, on the things that they claim to care about. I really do believe that the Eighth Amendment on its face renders capital punishment unconstitutional. I really do think that the right to an impartial jury enshrined in the Sixth Amendment must mean the right to a representative jury of one's community. Absolutely believe that the protects Fourth Amendment's protection against unreasonable search and seizure means that the cops cannot harass, arrest, or murder me simply because the officer has a hunch uh, about the color of my skin. I can make a textualist and even originalist case against the kind of white supremacy infused into our Constitution. So he breaks it down and explains how the whole Constitution is actually, like I said, it was written uh, by colonists and slave owners for the benefit, for the explicit benefit of other colonists and slave owners. And there's been amendments here and there, here and there, but the actual interpretations of the Constitution still remain because of one, the Supreme Court, and two, because of uh, our uh, Senate and Congress. Mostly, well, I won't even say the Republican Senate and Congress. I'll say the Senate and Congress in general, because it's all one machine. All right, and now, and speaking of that, the next, like I said, it flows really good, and then it goes to, uh, we'll go to chapter 12, where he says, let's see here, reverse racism is actually not a thing. All right, and he goes into detail about explaining why that can't be the case, and he lays out a really good explanation of that. Um, let's see. Let's see. Let me see. I was looking. I had it marked here, but I'm looking here. One second. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay, right here. Start right here. Okay. He says here, there is nothing in the Constitution that requires courts to have different modalities for judicial review, and there's certainly nothing requiring courts to define those different standards the way they have. If it was up to, he says, if it was up to him, he changed his standard of review based on the diversity and legislature passing the law or regulation. Did minorities and women get a say in this ordinance? If so, sure, as long as it's not clearly stupid, it should probably be constitutional. Did y'all really pass this law with an all white or disproportionately white legislature? Really? What year is this? If so, I'm not inclined to give you people any difference at all. So he goes into and it's still like that today, surprisingly, that most of our laws and most of the laws of this land are geared towards the success of the white male, and uh, and geometrically opposed to that is the failure of the black male. So uh, I don't know if there's ever going to be any changes, but what I do know is that people should be aware of the environment that they actually live in. A lot of us aren't really aware of the laws that we a lot of us really aren't aware of the laws that we have in this country that are against us. And I think if they did have the laws, if we did know how the laws were structured, I think we would also be more willing, or be more what's the word, enthusiastic about making changes. I'll say that. I'll say it like that. All right, and we're going to be winding down here because I only really allotted 30 minutes for this, and so let me get back to and okay, reverse racism. Okay, and then he has a chapter on abortion, which, I mean, the laws that they're passing now on abortion is like, uh, it's insane, and there's so much press. Like Roe versus Wade, they're not supposed to be able to. Well, not supposed to be able to, but that should be a law, or that should be a ruling that is not overturned, because when it was passed, it went through all of these reviews. It went through it went through the whole process of being voted. A lot of the members that were on the Supreme Court are still on the Supreme Court. So you're going to tell me that just the passage of time to is enough to roll back, just because, I mean, what other reason, uh, you know it, just only thing that I know is the passage of time. What's changed? I mean, uh, I would even argue that abortion procedures are even easier now than they were, when the Roe versus Wade case first came to be. So that is a that is a situation that he explains very well, and also that we have to work in order to make sure that that is not it's not overturned in the future. Well, that that we overturn the overturning of Roe versus Wade, because it's all about the woman's choice. And how can legislators or the government tell a woman what she can do with her body? I mean, that that's insane. That's insane. That's not freedom. That is not that's nowhere close to freedom. Uh, that's fascism, actually. Like, if you can make a woman not have you can force a woman to have you can force a woman to have a baby that she may not be able to take care of, or that she may, like, even she, let's say a woman was raped and and conceived uh, a, a child during the rape. You mean to tell me that you have to uh, raise a baby that you had no control over, even getting? You know what I mean? It just doesn't make sense. But anyway, as far as the law is concerned, he explains it really, really, really well. All right, so I'm going to go to the last chapter, and the chapter is "What if your vote didn't matter?" Right. All right. So that's the last one. Well, it's actually not the last chapter. The last chapter is called "The Final Battle," but that's the last one we're gonna cover today. So, and what if your vote didn't actually matter? Uh, and I kind of differ with Ellie a little bit on this, because I mean, I do vote, but I only vote because I think there's a lesser of two evils. I mean, I think there's not a lot of difference between the Republican and the Democratic Party. Not a lot of. I mean, there's some difference, but I don't think there's a lot. They're all controlled by lobbyists. They're all controlled by super PACs and the whole nine. Um, so he's saying that you know we should vote more, just to make sure that we can control the laws of the land, and that's true to some extent. But the thing is, as I see it right now, and this is I know it's supposed to be about the book, but I'm just giving my little 2 cents on it. And he has a better grasp on politics and the law than I have, especially when it comes to like gerrymandering and all of that. I think that your vote doesn't matter, because if it did matter, if our votes actually matter, then the majority would be able to change the laws that they want changed. But as it is now, the majority, if there's certain polls that the majority says, okay, we want this done. Here, for example, I'll give you one for example, gun control, right? I saw an interview with Steve Kerr, and he said, he stated that 90%. He said there was a survey that 90% of our population in the United States agrees with uh, gun control laws. You know what I mean? But it's still, the bill has been written, but it hasn't passed. And that tells me that there's the government is not controlled by the people, and that is what a democracy is supposed to be, because we're supposed to put people in office, and then they're supposed to then go and make the changes that we want to make, that their constituents want. And you know That barely ever happens. It's still the same old cycle all the time. The offices change hand, from change hands, and Democrats have control, and Republicans have control, and Democrats have control, but nothing really changes. It's all the same. So, what if your vote didn't matter? What would you do? What would you do to make change if your vote didn't matter? I guess that's the question that he was posing, and he gives a couple solutions, but I do believe it's that part may be a long way off. All right, everybody. Thanks for joining our digital neighborhood. Um, and I once again, I just want to thank everybody for listening a little bit, and I just want to let you know that our book club will be reviewing books every last Wednesday of each month. And the next book that we'll have on tap will be Billy Carson's Compendium of the Emerald Tablets. Oh man, this is such a. If you want to know the history of where you come from and why you're here, and about your past, about our past as human beings, this is an excellent book. Excellent book. The Emerald Tablets are tablets that are thousands and thousands of years old. Predates the Bible, predates the Quran, predates the Torah. All these religious books, they got their start from here. So we're gonna go through a little bit of that stuff next month, and I hope people will join us, or get something out of it. And as always, love is the new black. And if if you're gonna be a leader, you got to be a reader. All right. So I'll talk to y'all the next time, and love you as always.